Dear Boomers, my question to you today is how many hippies were there back in the day in the 1960s and 70s? The true hippies were kind of small in number, you might say. They were a core group that was small, but their influence reached tens of millions of people. As just an example, we could go to a march on Washington, for instance, where there may be 50 to 100 to 700,000 attendees, but there were many, many other people who couldn't go. And they took in probably 8 to 10 times to 5 million people who were interested in that particular march. So, back in the day, people were smoking pot. I personally was a high school dropout, and I went on the road with a caravan of hippies, and we went to across Canada, hoping to live in Vancouver. And we had these dogs with us. We had 10 dogs, and these dogs were really at the root of our guardian angelship, you might say. I mean, they were my guardian angels. Tomorrow, my dog Maso is going to be 1 years of age. So I'm calling him, let me keep thinking about this. He is Master Yoda because he looks just like Yoda. Back in the day, we all had so many stories about our hippie escapades. And I believe that the stories that the hippies had, they're afraid to tell their stories. And we we as a generation woke up from what I call the slumbering 1950s, and everything that came after that was the electric flower power movement and everything that happened after that. And we brought a lot of stuff out of the closet, the Cultural Revolution, and we are still thinking that maybe we need to tell our stories. And maybe they need to tell their stories in other ways that they don't know, that need to be expressed in a journal or a memoir, painting or a sculpture. There's so many ways people can tell their stories, or they can gather together around a campfire and tell their stories that elicits some artistic endeavor of the future. So, the thing is, we had these dogs, and they were all killed when we eventually came to live in Pennsylvania, in rural Pennsylvania. Our Republican hippie hating neighbor shot almost all the dogs. And the one dog he didn't kill was Boopy. Boopy was a survivor. And as we were traveling across Canada, we were busted for marijuana. And the dogs were taken into a pound, but Boopy was the only one who wasn't taken. She hid into the woods, and she hid safely in the woods, may I add. So the next day, a bunch of mounted policemen came to the vehicle. We were in jail, but they came to the vehicle to see if they could find any more marijuana. And just as they were about to get into the places that were hiding things that we had, Boopy came tearing out of the woods, and she gnarled the arm of the main policeman leading the raid. And then she disappeared again. So he went back to the office, and he called us all into the place where we met with them. And we had a rather interesting night in jail. It was kind of scary because I thought, well, there goes my life. I'm going to be in jail for the rest of my life. And this story revolves around our dogs saving our lives. Has a dog ever saved your life? Be honest, think about it. They probably all have. Every dog you have ever had in your entire life has saved your life, but you just have to think about it. Now, Boopy was an amazing little beagle German Shepherd collie. And she had a mind of her own. She never ate one bite of dog food, and we all would give her the food from our plates. She lived to a ripe old age of almost 20. So these guys took us into a room and said, you know, your dog, I could have shot your dog, he said. I could have killed that dog who came out of the woods, and then he showed his bandaged arm, freshly bandaged arm. There may have been a little spot of blood there. And he said that she was just protecting her territory. And he said, I trained German Shepherds for years. I understand dogs. I understand dogs. She was just protecting her territory, and I did not kill her. However, they did not go further into the search, where they would have found things that would have kept us in jail, like I said, for many, many years. And I didn't think I would have been bailed out by anybody. My parents had disowned me, literally disowned me. I have a note from my father saying, good luck with your life. May the wind always be at your back. You're done here. Goodbye. So, everybody else that was with me in jail, we all kind of like, oh my God, we didn't give away anything. But we were released. We were deported from Canada. And little Boopy and all the dogs were released from their cages in some kennel somewhere. And we all took off for San Francisco, where we were homeless. What the hell? And so I was unhappy about these dogs being shot, where we finally ended up in rural Pennsylvania. And they were shot one by one by this neighbor who eventually became a hot-shot member of the Republican Party. He built a landfill that completely polluted the land after we left. Except one of the guys stayed, and he was able to get a lawsuit from all the neighbors to stop him from polluting any further. He actually polluted the Susquehanna River that went down to Baltimore. And but nevertheless, to stay on track here, I just want to say that all of our dogs at the time lived short lives because they were killed or by this neighbor, basically, one by one. And the reason that he did that is because he wanted to come into our house and bust us, and he didn't think he could do that with the dogs everywhere. That's true. He could not. So I was traumatized by the death of these dogs. And I have always loved dogs so deeply. I have noticed that they really weren't that concerned by dying themselves. They took everything in stride. I'll never forget, one of my wonderful dogs was hit by a car. He didn't die, but he was shot into the air. He came back down and he continued running. They live in the moment and they love unconditionally. And I just love everything about them. I love them. Now, what has this taught me? I have written a book about my escapades with these dogs, and I can talk about it again. We need to be very aware of how our past affects us now. I was pretty much of a lost soul, and then I went to nursing school and became a full-time nurse with obstetrics, gynecology, labor and delivery, and I was a nurse practitioner for a number of years. So these things rehabilitated me to focus on the value of helping other people instead of just being a lost soul. And I think a lot of us during that time felt that and I think young people in general might feel, who am I and why am I here? Why am I here? And that's a good question to ask yourself. Somebody on my comment section said, how can somebody have a contact high from LSD? Because in a previous film, I talked about how my brother, his wife Jala, hi Jala, and myself dropped Orange Sunshine, LSD, and then went and had dinner with my parents. And we were eating potato soup, and I remember it looked like it was coming up into a fountain. It was like moving and swirling. And my brother and his wife, Jala, all had the same experience with that. So then I looked around at my mom, and my father was very judgmental. He knew they must be high on something. And as I mentioned in that video, our eyes were dilating and contracting and dilating and contracting. And we're like, oh my God, what have we done? Suddenly, my mother started to laugh and laugh and laugh. And she got into the spirit of it. And that was always the beauty of my mother. She had lots of conservative ideas that had nothing to do with general ideas of being conservative. I mean, she was conservative about drugs and alcohol, of course. And she thought we should all become lawyers and doctors. And she wanted me to become a nurse. I think I'm the only one who fulfilled her promise, her desire for me. But everybody else made her happy too. In the end, we all made up, and we'd healed that generational gap that was so prevalent over the years. And why am I telling you this? Because I believe boomer stories should be told. You boomers out there, come on over and tell us your stories. They're beautiful, they're lovely, they made you who you are, and they made me who I am. And tomorrow we will continue along this track. As by the way, I recorded all of these experiences into a book that is printed on Amazon. I don't want to, I just want to talk about what's in that book. I'll continue to say what is in that book. Please subscribe to my channel. Love to you all. Bye-bye.